Hello and welcome to the Rask Network. What you're about to hear and see is limited to general financial information only. Please be sure to speak to your financial planner or refer to our financial services guide available at rask.com.au/FSG before acting on the information.
Drew, Meredith, welcome to this episode of the Australian No, it's not. It's an investors podcast. How you going?
We'd have to redo that introduction if we're on the finance podcast, I think, but because it's the investors podcast, we're fine. Yeah. Doing very well. It was a quiet night last night, so feeling good.
Yeah, it was a very quiet night. We're in very good spirits. We
barely lasted past the 9 o'clock fireworks.
Yeah. I mean, we're healthy. What a great night it was. Obviously, we're recording this in advance because we know we probably wouldn't be this sprightly.
Well, you never know. We're grown-ups.
Yeah, we are.
When we're not
adult men
on the
now.
podcast, yes.
So this is New Year's Day, and we're talking about how to set goals a little bit, talk a little bit about how people go wrong with their investing when they're thinking about this type of thing. And then we've got a bunch of questions that have been sent in advance. Things like, how does one become a financial planner? Or my wife and I are considering purchasing a holiday home, and a bunch of other things. Such as ETFs, how we would invest for our child, and different things like this. Just to be confirmed, Drew and I do not have a child together, but I mean, stranger things. Drew, how do you set financial goals? As a qualified financial planner, how do you set financial goals for your clients?
For clients, yeah. I mean, it takes the big thing about financial advice, and it kind of often gets forgotten, is that you can identify and discuss those goals and objectives up front and at the beginning. Mm-hmm. But like anything, they actually change all the time. Your life changes, markets change, children, family, everything changes. So it's as much about setting long-term attainable goals as it is adjusting to changes as they come along. But the process is very much getting to know these people, these families, as much as possible. We find it incredibly important to have both members of a couple in as many conversations as possible. We know that's not always possible, but at least one or two occasions in that lead up. And then it's a lot of questions. So up front, we basically are always open, and hopefully I talk less than clients do when I meet them. But it's literally the question is, why have you sought advice? That hopefully gets to the depth of what their objectives are. And a lot of the time it takes our experience and skill to work out from what they're saying what they're really looking to achieve. And a lot of the times, as you'd expect, it's pretty straightforward. We
like
want to
retirement
know how much we
goals
can have in retirement, what we have to do to get there, and can we retire today? There's so many, and this is probably one of the benefits of being specialized in retirement advice, that there are less questions that need answered. There's plenty of strategies, but the objectives are very clear. Yeah. When you're younger, you have all different, you could have debt objectives, you could have investment, capital objectives, insurance protection objectives, and a lot of them change. They're still relevant, but they do change a lot as you get closer to retirement.
Yeah.
Lots of questions and lots of questionnaires.
Yeah, such as the life of a financial planner. Yeah. If you're setting your own goals, one of the things that I like to do is start with the end in mind, and that would mean, well, where are you now?
Your
where do you want to get to?
Or your
Well, not the old Charlie Munger quote of show me where I'm going to die or tell me where I'm going to die and I won't go there. Not to that extent. We're not talking about incentives.
Like a SMART goal.
Yeah. So like one that I do with a lot of business owners when I coach them is it's a framework called Now, Where, How. And shout out to Jordan who taught me this. But so where are you now? Where do you want to go? And how are you going to get there? And it's an exercise you can do. So I'm here now with my finances. I want to get to here, but then how? A lot of people don't do the how. In business and in personal finances, most people do not do the how. And that's the magic sauce. That's the Big Mac sauce that's whacked between the patty and that same old brioche bun. That's the Big Mac sauce. How do you get there? And you might be confused and you might not know the essentials, but I'll give you some nuggets. Like obviously you can work out how much you're spending or how much you're earning, and then the difference is your savings or lack thereof. The first step would be to pay down debt most times, not always, but First step is pay down debt. Yeah. Then it's, as you go, you build an emergency fund for life's uncertainties, and then you start investing for the long term. That's basically the formula.
Yeah.
As you approach retirement,
you get all the options come up as you start investing.
Exactly.
Once you've got that cash flow and that capital and that savings, that's where all your options start to open up, and you start asking the question of super versus direct, or shares versus bonds. They become, unfortunately, a lot of the time they become the thing that stops you from doing anything, whereas they should just be the outcome and an end decision rather than the beginning.
Absolutely. And a lot of people also tend to, when it comes to financial goals, is jump straight to the investing. So buying a property or investing in
execution.
Shares. Which is a mistake, because I believe you can't invest your way out of a savings mistake. And what I mean by that is you can't have terrible financial hygiene. My brother uses the analogy of a sieve, like where you put the flour in, it kind of just mists away. That's how he used to describe his pockets. Money would go in and then it would just disappear. And it's true. Like, we had Brian Hartzer on the show late last year, and he said to me, this is Brian Hartzer. He was the CEO, one of the most recognizable bank CEOs, the CEO of Westpac, paid millions upon millions of dollars, has been all that, throughout his life, basically. And he said in the podcast at the very end, he said, I wish I could give myself advice to just save a little bit more, because I just assumed that I could earn more.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key thing. So now we're here now, just on a piece of paper. What assets do you have? Shares, property, a car, cash in the bank, whatever the case may be. What are the debts on that? So then that's how you get a complete picture. Then you go, okay, I've got $110,000 of assets, or net assets we call it, or $500,000 including super, or whatever the case. I want to get to $1 million. Okay, so now I've got the million figure. The difference between those two is $500,000. We've got 10 years to do it. What's 500,000 divided by 10? $50,000 a year. You'd have to do what we would do in financial planning is have some growth in there. But you're starting to break it down. Okay, it's $1,000 a week. That's a lot of money, but I don't need to save quite 1,000 because there's going to be growth. So maybe it's $500 a week.
Yeah.
Now we go, okay, what's the best place to put that money? Maybe it's into super. So how can I do that? How do I put money into super? How do I put money into shares?
What super fund do I pick?
What super fund? So that's the how part, and that's where we're starting to break it down. So big goal, broken down, yearly, monthly, weekly, however you see fit. The final bit is the onions in this Big Mac analogy. So we got the Big Mac sauce. We want those onions in there. Without that, the Big Mac doesn't work. This is the way you track things.
Yeah.
How do you track client portfolios? You would use some sort of tool, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, a big part is running those quarterly reviews for clients, which means you're looking at them every quarter with consistency, and it's something I think you can do whether you're in retirement or you're in accumulation. Checking in and doing it on a regular basis, don't leaving it to chance. The investment side, you can have rules about it, but making sure you're reviewing it, checking it, and the old piece of paper once a year, think about, are all the assets you own, property, shares, whatever it happens to be, would you still be holding them today? But very much have consistency. And then if you've got those $50,000, $150,000 objectives, when you're plotting it quarterly, you can actually see a real trend occurring. When you're plotting it daily, when you're looking at it too regularly, it can almost be, and one thing I said here is give yourself a break. It can be disconcerting, watching what the market does. I've seen so many experiences where people are contributing heavily into a falling market, and they see their contributions basically disappear as they're
put
investing.
money in, it goes down. Put money in, it goes down.
Yeah, that's the worst thing. And then you probably want to stop, but you have to. If you've got your goal set properly, it makes it easier to understand that and continue with that strategy, which is where all the value is.
Yeah. A few things that are extras that come from the Australian Finance Podcast, our other channel. People not tracking goals as a way to fail. If you choose goals that are not aligned to your values, like if you just choose, I don't know, I want $1 million, but you don't need $1 million, and it's got nothing to do with how you want to live your life, you're probably not going to achieve it simply because it doesn't mean enough to you. I've got in here, don't know yourself. I do not set goals in the traditional sense myself. I try and develop habits and routines that just compound to big goals. And I talk about this in one of our free courses on Rask websites. I talk about it in the money and budgeting course. I think habits are way more powerful than goals, but you have to have a goal to guide the habit. So if my goal is, all right, going back to that $1 million, already got 500, that's $1,000 a week. What can I do to make that easier on me? I could automate, the deposits when my salary comes in. I could remove, the vices on my phone, gambling apps or different things that waste my time and those types of things. And finally, I think you talk about this a lot with retirement, is I think a lot of people make goals that require some like outside influence to happen. A friend of mine did really well out of Bitcoin. Spoke to him a year ago. He was devastated. Spoke to him a few weeks ago.
He's got a Lamborghini.
He was ready to retire. So, if that had gone the other way. You
be immune from those and resilient to things like Bitcoin or stock prices, or you don't want them to be influencing the achievement and the attainment of those goals.
And this comes back to just trying to bet on one thing. Like if you're only investing in property, your goal is solely dependent on the property prices and whatever happens with interest rates. It's a mistake, in my opinion. It might go right, but it might go right for the wrong reasons. You might just get lucky. So that's what I would say. And finally, short, medium, long term.
This is something I do. I almost use this for short term goals and objectives, but also long term. Like the problem with I've found, yes, once you get habits, I'm a very habitual person. Like once I'm in a habit, it's hard to break it.
You say habitual?
Habitual.
Oh, okay.
I think that's the word.
Yes.
I think the big challenge you have is if you set too big an objective and it doesn't feel like you're attaining anything on a more regular basis, on a day-to-day basis, you need that positive reinforcement and positive feedback to stick to things that can sometimes be uncomfortable, whether it's because the market's not doing what you want or because you have to give up spending on something because you're putting that money away for saving. So I do it very basically, even on a to-do list. Like I'll have big objectives, which are strategy, which are new launches, which are new ideas, different services that Waddle might provide in the next 12 months. Break it down all the way to I have a daily to-do list that is incredibly narrow. And just the nature of, even if it's you set this up weekly, knocking off I deposited $50, like having that constant crossing things out and leaving them there once you cross them out gives you the satisfaction. And I'm guessing some sort of, is it not cortisol? What's the other one?
Serotonin?
The hit that you need, the positive reinforcement to keep going.
Not a biology podcast, but
just feeling the zeitgeist.
Zeitgeist, something positive. It's a feeling you get. Yeah. You'll know it.
The positive feeling. I think it's not adrenaline. There was another one. Yeah.
We had Grant Hackett on the show.
Cortisol equals bad.
We sat down with Grant Hackett not too long ago, and he said that just this little bad boy. He said that we talked about, he and I, that in the pool you've got a
dopamine.
Dopamine. There we go. Didn't want to say that word. In the pool you've got a clock that tells you how you're doing. And if you're an athlete, you need to monitor your performance. But in finances, a lot of people don't check their overall picture and see how they're going enough. So they don't get the feedback loop, this year wasn't great, or this year was good, or this month was good. So the more of that, to an extent, you can do, the better. I think that you find a really unhealthy association with benchmarking yourself in the first few years of retirement. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But I see this with people around me, is the first 3 years after retirement, you're a bit nervous, even if you're younger, which I've got a question on this in just a moment, you tend to get a bit stuck and in the weeds and emotional about your investments. So what I would say is just know when too much is enough with your goal setting as well. Okay, so we've got some good questions. If this is your first time on the Australian Investors Podcast or your first time in a Rask podcast, welcome. We do this every week, multiple times. And so you can subscribe and you'll get episodes just like this one, but hopefully better, because this one's not great. No, I'm kidding. We'll keep you entertained and we'll have a bit of fun throughout 2025. We did an episode just the other day, which I would love for you to listen to after this one, or watch if you're on YouTube, because Drew and I had a bit of fun and we picked a share portfolio or an ETF portfolio together, and we're going to see how it goes throughout the year, and the community portfolio as well. So 3 portfolios, you can play along at home. We do a lot of questions on this show, And it's important to understand we don't know your needs, goals, or objectives. So you should get the advice of a licensed and trusted financial planner who can tailor advice to you, especially if you don't understand what we're talking about. You can find a financial planner on the moneysmart.gov.au website to make sure that they act under an actual license and they are indeed a full financial planner. Or you can use the link in your podcast player or YouTube description, and the one that says financial planning, just click that and we'll match you with a financial planner like, say, Drew here and the team at Wattle Partners.
I could ask for my financial advisor number.
Did you really?
Yep.
Huh.
I think they might have typed in Andrew Deremuth, who is not a licensed financial planner.
Could be though.
It's 001001056.
There you go. Quote that, take that to Money Smart, chuck it in, see what happens.
You can find out what my middle name is too.
Yeah. Roger?
Close.
Reginald?
Close.
Reagan?
Not close.
Ah, damn it. Mystery remains.
It's on the ASIC register. You'll find it pretty easily.
Oh no, that means I'll be able to see my middle name if I ever go on there.
Oh,
it's spelled wrong.
Douglas?
Douglas.
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 House in the house. Anyway, we've got serious questions because this is a serious investing podcast. Drop it like it's stock. Asks a very
I like this one.
interesting question that's related to Drew, I think. Drop it like it's stock. Oh yeah, if you're new here, by the way, we ask everyone for funny names when they write in. So if you want to ask a question, there's a link in your podcast player or in your YouTube description, the one that says ask a question. Select that one and the Australian Investors Podcast. Drop it like it's stock says, how long does it take to become a financial planner? Narrator's voice, not long.
20 years.
I'm always hearing there is a massive shortage and will worsen in the future. Oh, as in like the supply demand, right? I'm a professional in another industry, but would love to make the switch and become a CFP. That stands for Certified Financial Planner. What is the best way to do this and how long is the training? Any advice would be appreciated. Drew, how does someone become a financial planner like yourself?
I mean, and this has changed a lot in recent years.
Yeah, still changing.
Yeah, so and not even the legal side, but if you think about going into a financial advice business, historically you would have joined as someone doing paperwork and administration, helping with share trades, helping with, setting up managed funds. And then you'd graduate to supporting a financial advisor, like an associate advisor, and then you go to a paraplanning role where you help prepare a statement of advice. And then eventually you'd become and do some study along the way and then become a financial advisor.
Yeah.
It's kind of the entire industry has changed, and you've probably seen a lot of this lately as well, that the professionalism of the industry is basically means that people are walking in as either qualified or soon to be qualified financial advisors, and the traditional graduation through those roles is falling away. A lot of them are non-client facing versus client facing. That's just on their kind of business perspective, but legally, I think I'm going to say it takes 4 years at a minimum to get to a position where you could work as a financial advisor. And that's, these days you need a bachelor's degree, an approved bachelor's degree, which is usually a minimum of 3 years.
Yep.
And I don't think you can even speed that up anymore, but I think we'll put a link in the show notes to some of those, the courses that you can do. So historically you could have almost any similar, not even a finance degree, you'd have a broad range of degrees, and all you needed was an ASIC RG146
it's diploma, which you could get in like 3-4 weeks.
Which you could get historically. Crazy. But now you need an approved degree. You need to go and pass the ASIC exam.
Which is what I just did.
Which is what Owen just did.
Which is bloody hard.
And you need to do a professional year. So you need to be mentored or taken through a professional year by a licensed financial advisor and understand the process and do a lot of check-ins and a lot of reporting and a number of legislated steps before you can actually start providing retail advice, but providing financial advice to retail clients.
So I'm going to summarize as quickly something what you said. You said before it might take 4 years. If you have a degree, there is a chance that you can go into a graduate diploma. So you can speak to one of the providers of that, like Kaplan University is one of the biggest in Australia, and they'll be able to tell you exactly what you need to do for the education component. But the crucial thing is this: there is a shortage in the industry of good financial planners. A lot of the people that are like mature age, career switching and that sort of stuff, if you just complete the essentials, like say 3-4 units at uni might take you 6 months, I would suggest that you could start looking for those junior roles as a career switch. But keep in mind, junior doesn't mean junior pay packets in this industry anymore.
You're supposed to talk it down.
Come and work for Drew where you'll get a very meager salary. No, and that's good. No, but seriously, like you can get, if you're you got your head on your shoulders, you're very mature, you can speak to clients and you understand the basics of finance and financial planning.
We'll teach you the rest.
Yeah. As long as you keep studying and you keep working towards something, the roles that aren't financial advice, so the other ones where you assist a financial planner, where you work in their modeling team and that they call that paraplanning, that can still be 80 grand a year. It can be more sometimes, depending on your qualifications as you come to it. So we're getting a lot of emails from people that want to move into financial advice. So because obviously, what we do. So speak to us or write in to the show, speak to Drew here at Wattle Partners about how you can make that switch, because we're always on the lookout, not just us two, but people in our community are always on the lookout for good people, ethical people that want to help, genuinely want to help, because we need you in the industry. So good question. Not really relevant for everyone, but that's okay. Good question. No question's a bad question. Although, actually, I take that back. There's been some mostly from either of us trying to trick each other.
Joke.
Where's this question that I wanted to get to about the kids? Here we go. So, penny wise or clown? ?
From it.
Once probate is granted,
Ooh.
I will be managing a low 6-figure inheritance as trustee for my 12-year-old daughter until she turns 28. I'm leaning towards putting it all in a high-growth, diversified ETF like DHHF or VDHG. Are there any other approaches I should be considering? And on this, I would say we don't know. We're going to be very clear. You should probably at least take your time, be patient with yourself, and listen to a few podcasts before you run into anything or take what you're about to hear as personalized to you, because we don't know who you are. So with that said, Drew, I'm going to generalize this and say, I've got to manage money for a child, 15 or 20 years.
Yep.
We get asked that question all the time.
Yep.
How would you invest for kids? That's what I'm going to generalize it as. How would you invest for kids if you had a round figure today?
Yeah, and I'll put a disclaimer on this. As the question itself, I'm always wary of this would be a testamentary trust, but are there clauses that allow access to any income during the period? Because that could change your objectives when you're building it. But in terms of how would I invest for the next 16 years, I think one thing you can do is accept a higher level of volatility
So
if
risk
you're
up
an
and down?
accumulator. Yeah. And this is why ETFs are so popular and, tracking the market, because you've got a 16-year period, but she's also going to be 28 when she gets it. So she has another 32 years after that to continue saving. So you can deal with some of that volatility. And similarly, it's going to be held in a trust, and the changes in it aren't going to impact on her lifestyle at the moment. So there is some potential to accept a higher level of risk. I am always wary of being too narrow. So just putting it into a single diversified ETF, because we know you've got a similar problem with industry funds, and I'm not bashing up on them for the first day of the new year.
Bashing up on
them. But they're difficult, and they have restrictions that don't allow them to be nimble. So we've seen in the past, so something like a Vanguard Diversified has a large holding in fixed interest that ultimately detracted from returns. These will have a large exposure to the biggest tech companies and the biggest mining and banking companies. So they are incredibly narrow. I don't think you need to overcomplicate it.
No.
But I'd be looking at being a bit more granular in what ETFs I'm buying, and probably setting an actual asset allocation strategy when you're going to manage this. Maybe you don't need to do it quarterly because you're doing it on behalf of someone else. I'd always suggest quarterly, because the other risk you have is that if certain parts of the global economy do well, you're going to be overexposed to those, and that's going to increase the risk that there's an impact on the capital at 28 years of age. So I'd be looking to go a bit more granular, probably holding more than one or two investments, at least kind of 10 to 15, and be wary of. I think you want to manage to multiple objectives here. You want to have a pool of assets that will provide a good income, but you also want to grow it.
I think you said a really salient point, which is that
that's quite rare.
There may be terms of this trust that mean that they can access
It's
will
sooner.
get
Yep.
income between now and
Yep.
28. So it depends on
That
that.
was before I went on the rant.
Oh yeah, that was 3 weeks ago when you,
But is the key. I think so. My long answer to that is be diverse, like be more diverse. You think this is diversified, but it's quite narrow. So think a bit more granular and put some framework around it because you are managing money on behalf of someone else and it will be important to them.
Yeah.
And then make sure so in this case, your objectives are determined for you. They can't access till they're 28 and they may be eligible to use the distribution. Maybe it's for school fees, maybe it's for cars, houses, whatever it happens to be. So make sure you've got those outlined first and have put together a asset allocation strategy that can manage both.
If they're saying once probate is granted, this would potentially, correct me how someone gets this, there's probably a death in like a grandparent that's then left in a testamentary trust.
Testamentary trust, yep.
Which then has a rule inside of it that says money goes to grandchild A, and the parents come along and gone, okay, I need to manage that for them.
Usually the will would
determine them as trustee.
The parent as the trustee, yeah.
Yep. Okay. Just making sure for
Or
anyone
whoever
that's
that person
playing
is
along
as
at
the
home.
trustee. That's all. So a testamentary trust, which I'm assuming that everything says it is, the terms of that trust are actually outlined in your will. They can't be changed after you pass, and they can't be changed by the people who inherit them. And it's basically this capital will be locked in that entity until she turns 28.
Okay. So personally, for me, investing for kids, we did some good content on this recently. I'll put a link in the show notes. So resource investing for kids. I agree with you, Drew. I think you probably need more than just one thing. And I think that's important because as she gets towards an age, or anyone gets towards an age where they're more actively invested, if you just go, here's this thing, it says VDHD or a bunch of letters, and there's this much money, it's not really a good educational opportunity. Try and break it up a bit. Try and make it more relevant to them as well. There's an educational lesson in this as well as a financial like inheritance. There's a educational inheritance. So try and figure out ways that you can engage them. Maybe you share this podcast with them. Maybe you give them an update every 6 months. You say, hey, this money's coming to you. We need to sit down and figure out how you're going to get paid this distribution this year from the trust. And as they grow older, obviously 12 is a bit different, but as they grow older, try and educate them using what's in front of you as an opportunity to get their buy-in. We've probably got time for one more question, Drew. I just love this one. It just stood out for me because it's all caps and it says thunder chicken, chicken rat.
Oh, that was me. I added chicken rat.
Oh, okay.
I was watching Bluey this morning. I mean, yeah.
Okay.
There's a chicken rat egg on Bluey, kids cartoon, sorry. Zeitgeist.
If you're a parent, you probably get it.
Yeah. If
So
you're a grandparent, you probably get it.
Hey, guys.
Bluey's like the most streamed TV show in America.
Australian made,
Yeah.
sold to the Americans, wasn't it? Or British?
British Ludo.
Yeah. Hey guys, for those of us that are midway through our journey to retirement with a decent chunk of money in a super fund, good for you. Do you think that now is a good time to switch from a high growth option to a more balanced option? We talked about this in a recent episode.
Foolish.
Given the frothy market, do you think this would be a smart capital allocation or foolish attempt to time the market? Well, switching options inside super, Drew, I think at the end of the day, normally someone that has money in super has a long-term time horizon, and all of the data says you can't time the market.
Exactly.
Well, not all the data, but like overwhelmingly, it says just be disciplined, hold through. Some people say they can. It's very alluring because if you think the market's about to fall, it may. Mitchell in our team actually read a bit of research the other day and shared it with our community. I think it was, I'm not going to say who it was because I don't know for sure, but the study effectively showed that 50% of the time, the US stock market is within 5% of its all-time high. So half the time, it's nearly at the all-time high. When you think about a stock market chart, it goes from like the bottom left to the top right, and we're at the top right all the time. So what that means is almost all of the time, it seems scary. And even on the way down, it seems more scary. Drew's laughing his head off over here, off the camera, and I think it's because he's just found a dad joke he's going to give to us in a moment. But my point is this. maybe in certain circumstances, it makes sense for someone's risk profile to shift, but it's not often the case. If someone has a long-term time horizon, yes, you take risk by investing more in shares and that type of thing. And everyone's situation is different, provided you've got a good cash buffer, so you don't need to draw on your investment money at a bad time. You understand your long-term investment goals and like what you're generally doing it for. And you don't invest money that you might need in the next 3 years, maybe even 5 years. You don't do that. You're stacking the odds in your favor. That's what I would say. And if you want to study on this, Google, does market timing work? Charles Schwab. And there's a fantastic.
It is New Year's Day. It's okay.
Yeah. It's been a heavy night.
A big one. This shows one of the challenges and why it seems like more people go towards more self-directed options at retirement, that it's industry super funds. You're clearly worried about valuations.
You've mentioned industry super funds.
But do you know how, and part of this is probably because you don't know how much of your high growth option is exposed to which companies. So a big part of it's if you know exactly what's going to drive your returns, you're probably more comfortable staying where you are. And another reason is this is why we tend to look at things more with more granularity. I just made up a new word there.
Yeah.
Because you probably have every right to be concerned that, some of the tech sector is overvalued. But if you're in a portfolio where you can see your exposure to tech, you can make an adjustment to that while still maintaining exposure. So part of the problem is knowing exactly what you're invested into to know what impact this change will have. You might just expose yourself to other things. But again, I think it's foolish to attempt to try and time the market, particularly because we feel like it's at all-time highs. And this should always form part of a proper asset allocation or kind of objective decision. Have your objectives changed? No, then I wouldn't be adjusting your asset allocation significantly, which is what this is.
Okay. We'll be back in a few days' time with the next episode where we'll talk about a few different things like, how would you invest $10 million? And we've got more questions to be answered. If this is New Year's Day for you and you're out here setting some goals, I would give you 3 pro tips. And I'm conflicted when I say this. Number 1, subscribe to this podcast because we're here multiple times a week and we can answer your questions and hopefully help you achieve your financial goals. Numero 2, we have free courses that are available for you and your family because they're free and they're on the Rask website. There'll be a link. You can click on the services button and find all of the courses. We're on a mission to 100,000 Australians in Rask courses. We're about 32% of the way there. So quick math is 32,000 people have enrolled in these courses. Credit to you. And number 3, if you want financial planning advice, now is a good time to book in with a financial planner. Most of them are on holidays for a few more days yet, but you can get financial advice via the link in our show notes. But don't trust anyone until you verify them on the Money Smart website, the Financial Advisors Register. You can see people out there in the media and whatever, but they may not be qualified to give you the full amount of advice. So check that on the Money Smart website or, ask your friends and then make sure if you get a referral. So, Drew, this has been good fun. We're going to get a dad joke for you as we do each and every episode. What's your dad joke?
Did you know Superman goes to a Bitcoin meetup at 8 p.m. every Thursday?
No.
It's his crypto night.
I should have seen that coming. I totally should have seen it. The amount of crypto Superman jokes out there.
If we're talking about zeitgeist,
this is right on.
Crypto is
this is a joke that's on the zeitgeist. Well, that's a good one. I'll probably give you a 7 out of 10.
I like that one. Yep.
If
that's
you want
why I chortle during while you're reading another question. I tend to chortle.
Oh my gosh. If you want to write in and help Drew with his dad jokes, you can do that via the link in your podcast player. It says ask a question, select the Australian Investors Podcast. I do have to select the best question to name who gets a free course. The Value Investor Program for $499 is Thunder Chicken.
Thunder Chicken, Chicken Rat.
If you wrote in with the name Thunder Chicken, you know who you are because it's very unique. You win this week's prize of $499 worth of a course, which is the Value Investor Program. Write into us on the Rask websites and you got a deal. Keep the questions coming. We've got a whole summer packed of good questions and hopefully some decent answers. Drew, thanks for joining me.
Good to see you.
Thanks for watching this video on the Rask Network. While you're here, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can get videos each and every day on business, finance, investing, and so much more.